ebyenkolagana bya Uganda n'eggwanga lya America byeyongedde okubijja. Emikoosi gyeyongedde okuwanvuwa. Anti bannayuganda abeera mu ggwanga lya America bannakyukakyuka people power NUP batabuse. Bagamba nti okuva Uganda lwe yagaaniddwa okuddamu okuwerebwa ensimbi banka y'ensi yonna ekituufu ddala ogwo omulimu gwakoleddwa mulungi nnyo neera baagala enkolagana ya Uganda n'eggwanga lya America eyongere okuddamu okwetegerezebwa nga bagamba nti Uganda ne America enkolagana yaayo eriwo wakati wa muntu n'eggwanga lya America so si bannayuganda ne America. So nga ate enkola entuufu yandibadde nti enkolagana ya America eba enkolagana na Uganda nga bannayuganda so si Uganda omuntu Mwami Museveni. Bano bagamba nti America ekolagana na Mwami Museveni yekka so tekolagana na bannayuganda wabula family ya Mwami Museveni ne Mwami Museveni bebakolagana ne America era ensimbi ezibadde ziweebwa Uganda okuva mu America Mwami Museveni ne family badde bazikozesa nga bannayuganda tebaziganyulwamu. Nti bw'otuuka e Uganda enguudo zonna zijjudde ebinnya, amalwaliro temuli ddagala, ebyenjigiriza bifo abaana basomera wansi wa miti tebalina ntebe kwe batuula, nti era bw'osanga amalwaliro gonna gaadibadda nago malwadde gali mu mbeera mbi ng'ate America ewa Uganda ensimbi mpitirivu ez'okutumbula embeera y'abantu naye tezikozesebwa mu biziina kukola wabula zikozesebwa mu maka ga bwa president na famire ye bo ne beeyagala ne babeera nga bali mu bulamu obulungi nga bannayuganda bo bali mu kweyaguza lujjo. Kati nno bano bannayuganda bannankyukakyuka aba people power NUP abasinzidde mu NUP Diaspora Convention 2023 ne bagamba nti no nedda enkolagana ya Uganda n'eggwanga lya America esaanye eddemu etereezebwe ebagibwe bupya kubanga ebyatandikwa edda ku mirembe gy'abajjajjaffe Mwami Museveni yabyonoona kati bakolagana America na Mwami Museveni kubanga bamufunamu bamukolera ababalira ddiiro ez'enjawulo bafunira ebyobugagga eby'omu ttaka bo ne bagaggawaza ensi zaabwe ate nga Africa oba Uganda eyongera kubanga ebonaabona. Kati nno bano bagambye nti tebagenda kukkiriza America kuddamu kukolagana ne Uganda Mwami Museveni ng'akyali ku ntebe mpozi nga Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine amaze okulayira olwo bajja kuddamu America ekolagane ne Uganda babagenda enteekateeka empya America ne Uganda zibalina okutambulirako mu bukulembeze obw'okwewalangana ensimbi so si bino ebyaleero Mwami Museveni ensimbi nga zikozesa mu famire nno nkusaba otwegatteko n'obwombeefu bw'ekika ekyaggulu tugende wali e Washington DC ewali olukuŋŋaana lwa NUP Diaspora Convention 2023 tufune ebigambo bino wakati mu bujjuvu obw'enjawulo.
Thank you everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good day. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you. We are meeting at a critical time and representing Ohio chapter, the more recently inaugurated chapter. Among the audience are the vice leader of the chapter and some other members of Ohio chapter. So please wave so they can acknowledge you. Okay. So our challenge that we're given to address was rethinking trade and investment, the U.S. relationship, the U.S.-Uganda trade relationship. This is a big topic, and there's no way to do it justice. So our challenge for today is just to stimulate you so that we can get ideas, think about the issues, and see if what we identified is in keeping with your thoughts or not, and then get some feedback from you. US and Uganda have had a relationship for the last 60 years, that's since independence. Now, if you think about it, for 61% of that time, there's been one notorious warlord, I'm using those words very carefully, who's been in charge. So the relationship has largely focused on the security relationship, but trade and investment have kind of been put on the wayside. And those of you who are interested in these issues understand that trade and investment are critical issues in the development of the nation. When you see the young people on the streets of different nations today, part of what is driving them is anger. Anger because the relationship that exists between whoever they think is supporting the regime has been very exploitative. So they are left in poverty. And as the anger grows and boils, the same thing that is happening in those parts of the world is happening in Uganda. And you can feel it. So we are meeting at a very interesting time where there are different parts moving. You see the wars going on in Ukraine, the uprisings in Africa, the rumbles in Uganda, and this is a good time for US to re-examine how they have been handling the issues of trade and investment. And our main charge from this presentation is that we are where we are as Uganda because of the group that is in charge. It has failed, you know. It has concentrated on security, whatever they define as security, but has been very corrupt, has had a lot of nepotism, has not been creative in developing and rethinking what the economy needs. And there's no way that any additional investment could be given to the same people who have been creating the havoc, and we expect different changes. Now, Uganda and US relate in trade on different they relate through trade and investment framework agreements. We have things some of you know about the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. Some of you have heard about Prosper Africa, but most of the policies that deal with trade are implemented through the US Embassy and other agencies that operate within the embassy. So if we are going to have the changes, we have to ask, why has Museveni failed? What are the challenges that have led to this failure? And how can the current trade and investment relationship be redefined? So one of the things that, I'm just going to go to what we identified so that we can save some time. One of the things that we identified is that this is a good time to rethink and reimagine the trade, because Uganda has a young population which is potential consumers and market for goods. Also, Uganda is able to have a language of English spoken, so it's easier to communicate across the border. At least I'm talking about US specific. I'm not trying to denigrate any other language. And we have a population that is yearning for democracy. We also have US adversaries that are trying to make movements into Uganda. We have China playing a role, we have Russia playing a role, and if out of self-interest, the US should really, really think hard on how it proceeds. So these are some of the things we suggested. We suggested that normally the level of engagement between the US and Uganda is at a higher level, where you have the diplomats coming and planting a big flag. They deal with the dictator. As long as the dictator and his fellow bandits are ready and happy, kind of the other people, we matter but really do not matter. In a way, that is taking away the foundation for the future from both sides. So our suggestion was that instead of dealing at a higher level exclusively, we need to get back to the bottom. For those people who believe in economic development and community development, you know that you have to grow everything from the bottom up. So much as you relate with the trade minister, what are you doing with the businesses on the ground? Can we form those business relationships between businesses in Uganda and businesses in the US? Can we form those, some of you know about like sister relationships between cities. Can we work on that? Can we work on relationships between institutions? Maybe not for every village because it gets expensive, but maybe at a district level. So that the chamber, most Ugandans, if you ask them, the people involved in business and of any kind of trade, they have never heard about the opportunities that they could benefit from because the government deliberately gives this information to a selected, connected few. So if people knew what is going on, even in my hometown, maybe they would have a way to compete. How do I improve my goods? How do I make them marketable? The other part that we suggested was we need to look at the ethics of trade. How is the US doing trade in Uganda? Are we just getting whatever we want? That is the US. Is the US just getting what it wants and doesn't really care about the masses that are displaced, land grabbed, gross human rights resources? Just like there is a fair trade, if these issues of ethics were central, then a business would be thinking twice of who am I getting into business with? We got, I was supposed to show this, but I will not show it, but we got one of the papers from the recent summit that Uganda had in Chicago. And when you look at the list of businesses, first of all, they were led by the son-in-law of the president, Audrey Rabogo. Is he the best person to negotiate on behalf of Uganda? And the list, when you look at it, it was selected few businesses. But these are not the businesses that employ the bulk of Ugandans. The bulk of Ugandans are engaged in issues like agriculture, small business. So if you really want to redefine and get long-lasting commitment to Ugandans, not Uganda, then you have to focus on the people who are at the bottom and more inclusive of everybody. Okay. Then we needed to look at improvements in the supply chain along the way. Then there is need to value the demographics of the nation. We need to collect more accurate data of what is going on. But to us, most important, I think this was one of the issues that we thought about with the diaspora. We have a central role to play, but in spite of the richness of US's diaspora, they have not taken sufficient advantage of that. Can you imagine if the connections were not only made through the ambassador, but they were made at a village level? Because if I took a census now, there's almost a person from every district in this room. This could be very multiplicative. And also, if there was a way to complement the investment that diaspora makes personally in a village, as they match businesses' investment, maybe the US should think about matching what we invest as the diaspora in our communities. So, in the interest of time, thank you so much for listening to me. I'm inviting your discussions, and those are some of the ideas that we came forth with. Thank you. Questions, okay.
Thank you so much, Madam Harriet Nanyonga, for representing Ohio on that topic of trade and investment. Because of time, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take questions. I'm going to move on to the next. We have Minnesota chapter. They're going to be talking about security, cybersecurity awareness and best practices for non-technical use, with Mr. Mutiaba representing Minnesota chapter. Madam Harriet was 11 minutes. Mr. Mutiaba, I hope you can beat that.
All right, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and present about cybersecurity. It's a very important subject, as you know, the digitization of the entire, digitization of the world. I hope that Uganda will be digitized by the time we, we come into power. But anyways, first of all, I know I have very limited time. I want to take this moment. My niece was killed for land purposes, land grabbing purposes, just last week. I was contemplating coming over here, but I want to spend just a moment, and please don't count that time, to stand up and just recognize yeah. Thank you very much. So as you can see, I hope wherever you're standing or sitting, please look at, that's the abstract. I'm working with Mchala Muyingo, and we have Charles Chibulabuza and Elvis Balkalaba. Those are the people who organized the paper that we are going to discuss. That's the abstract over there. We're trying to make sure that all the people who are here are mostly not the technical people that work in information security. So this is a guide to anybody to help you to get the awareness that you need in order for you to protect your information. Everybody has a cell phone, you have a smartphone, and you have a computer. On that computer, you have information, banking information, you have lots of private information that fraudsters will come to be taking from you. Cybersecurity is often misspelled. I want to just take a moment to define it. It refers to the practice of protecting computer systems and networks and software from various attacks by different actors. It encompasses a range of technologies, processes, practices, and measures designed to safeguard digital assets and ensure confidentiality and integrity. Now, why is it important? As you have seen here, I hope you can read the concept of the fifth domain of war. I know we have Dr. Sejinja here, who is also in the Army, Captain Sejinja. Cybersecurity has become the fifth domain of war. So you have war in the air, you have war on land, in the sea, and now in cyberspace. That is talking about how important it has become. Everybody is connected to the internet. We had Madame Chomugisha over there. She was trying to get onto the internet to be able to get the information that she needed to use for her speech, for everything that she needs to work with that's in Uganda. Cybersecurity is safety, just as you lock your doors and make sure you have that high walls in Uganda. It's the same way that you should treat your data, your information. We must behave in ways to protect us against risks and threats that come with technology. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the pros, the insecurity professionals, who they are. You have penetration testers, you have SOC analysts, you have security managers, you have incident response teams, and so on. But that's not who you are, I suppose. So let us talk about who is at risk. Everybody who is here, who is connected to the internet, is at risk. And that's anyone who works in banking, anyone who works in in telcos, in law firms, in charities, oil and gas, anyone who has data. What are the threats? And you can see threat actors, hacktivists, organized crime. Now, state-sponsored security risks, I will discuss that really in a minute, because that's going to be very important to the people, especially the people who are coming from Uganda. You have malware, you have social engineering, you have phishing, and top cybersecurity risks, as you can see, mobile phone malware is on top, or is among the top 5. And that's where almost everybody here lies. So we will discuss why we need to make sure that everybody has awareness of these risks and what you can do to protect yourself, to protect your data and your information. The leading threats are spyware, viruses, worms, phishing, Trojan horses, social engineering, rootkits, botnets, and zombies. Now, spyware especially is very important because that's where we can have governments, like in Uganda or anywhere else, they tap your phone, they tap the network, they can plant malware on your computer, they can plant malware on your phone without you knowing, and it will monitor everything you do and give them back information. So you have to be very careful when I will give you ideas as to how you can protect yourself. Viruses, those are programs that multiply, and those are just meant to cause damage. So worms, logic bombs, Trojan horses, social engineering, now this is especially very important because that's how people get your passwords. You are not supposed to share your password with anybody. And make sure when you set your passwords, they have to be strong passwords. Phishing, never click on any of those links that come in your email. If you do not know who is sending you that email, don't click on that link because someone is on the other side waiting for you to click. And as soon as you click, their computer is waiting to get a connection to yours. And as soon as it happens, they have complete control over your computer. So be very careful of those. That's the #1 problem that we have, and it hasn't been solved. Different companies like Google are trying all their best to put controls in there so that when you click on that, at least there's notification to the technical systems back in the back end that will stop those phishing attacks. You can see here, this is a good example where someone was sent a link. It takes you to a place that looks like a bank, looks like your US bank site, and you put in all your information, but you're putting it in the wrong site. And right there you have given them your ID and your password. So, man-in-the-middle attack, that's where you are the victim and someone is online on the line as you're sending your information, someone else is able to tap into it. So you have to make sure that any connection you make is encrypted. It has to say HTTPS on top. Rootkits are just computer programs that are planted on your phone or your smartphone or your computer that will give them a back door into your computer. So someone is able to just get in your phone, do everything they want, and you may not even see that something is happening. This is especially important for people in politics where someone can work, for example, with MTN, and MTN will send you a security update. It will include that kind of rootkit that will give someone a back door into your computer, and you won't know it. And they will be able to listen to everything you say, all the meetings you plan, everything you're trying to do. They'll be able to know what's going on. So, password cracking. This is where somebody is able to crack, to get a database of your passwords. And as you can see, it only takes a few minutes with a very powerful computer to be able to get back an encrypted password and put it back in raw form where you can actually read it. I'm trying to go through this quick because I see that they're trying to look at me. So the best practices are to make sure that you protect not only your phone, but you have to have a holistic control system that puts in consideration the hardware, the operating system, and so I will give you ideas of how you can make sure you log in onto applications that are secure. Your host is your computer. It has to be secured, and I'll give you ideas here. You must have antivirus on your phone. I don't know how many of you have antivirus on your phones, because if you don't, it is very likely that someone will come and get into your phone and do whatever they want, and you won't know it. So make sure you go into, if you use Google Play, whatever you use, make sure that you have antivirus. Make sure that your computer has a firewall and that it's turned on, because if it's not, someone will be able to get on the network and get into your computer or your phone without a problem. Protect your operating system. Make sure you have security updates. Now, like I said, there is still a risk with that because the state can work with MTN, with those telcos, and send you security updates that have been planted with a toolkit, like we mentioned. Use strong passwords, and that means if you can, make them at least 12 characters. I would give you ideas about how to make strong passwords, but I think we are running out of time. So this thing about multi-factor authentication, I'll go back here real quick. Make sure that when you have your social network accounts, that if you have Facebook, if you have Google, go and turn on multi-factor authentication, because it is very easy. There have been so many data breaches, and in these data breaches, we have had myself, my data was breached by Facebook. And when I go into the website there, I'll show it to you, it's called Have I Been Pwned? It tells me that these are all the breaches where my account was included. And I go and change my password right away, because that means that there's what they call the dark web. Someone will go and buy your information and try to get into your computer. So this guy was in India trying to get into my Facebook account, but then he was not able to because he did not have my phone. And multi-factor authentication means you have the password and then something that you have. Something you have is a phone. So if they don't have your phone, they are out of luck, because your phone will now, if they steal your password, your phone will come, a message will come, you're trying to log into this, put in this PIN, and then they don't have that. Avoid social engineering and malicious software. We talked about that. Back up your data, especially for people from Uganda. You have to have a cloud backup, because I've had journalists and other media houses where the government comes and says they're taking all your stuff, all your computers. Well, they can take whatever they want if you have your data in Google Drive or OneDrive, whatever it is. They'll come and take your computers, but all your stuff will be there. And it's very cheap. So fraud, make sure you don't type you do not go to any website that does not have security encryption, which means you have to have HTTPS, or when you get into a Wi-Fi like we did today, make sure you use VPN. Now, Wi-Fi for Marriott might not have the same vulnerabilities as your small hotel in Mobende or wherever. So be vigilant and use VPN software. This is just an example of the tools people use to get into your systems. But in summary, phishing is the #1 way of taking your information. So avoid any emails where someone sends you a link. Use strong passwords, use multi-factor authentication, install security updates, or when you're on public Wi-Fi, use HTTPS or VPN, install personal computer firewall, install antivirus systems, back up your data and application, be aware of social engineering, secure your cloud and social media, be aware of spyware and install anti-malware. And the spyware, you know, the Pegasus system, I think they used it, and Mr. Kagame used it, and he was able to install it on a political opposition person, and they were able to get into his phone and take all the private information they needed. I wanted to give you this website, if you can see it. It's have I been pwned? Haveibeenpwned.com. It will tell you where any of your personal information has been breached. And there have been many breaches like that. And now, I know we are out of time. This one you have to get. The FBI has a site where if it's a Uganda government following you in America and they're trying to get they're trying to get into your computer or your phone, you can report it to FBI. It's FBI Investigate, Counterintelligence, and Transnational Repression. They are not supposed, if you run away from Uganda, they are not supposed to come and follow you into the United States because they are breaking the law. Also, check, every year you are allowed to get a free credit report. So on there you can see if someone has been able to breach you and created an account on your behalf. So thank you very much. I know I've lost points because I went over, but I hope it's helpful.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mutiaba. Next, we're going to have, and I'm sorry, I think if you have any questions, try to follow up with the presenters. Next, we have Mr. Martin Biakuleka, who will be presenting an individual paper, not representing a chapter, but one of the individual papers. Mr. Byakuleka, you're welcome. And Mr. Byakuleka's paper is on implications for democracy and good governance. Use this for now until
Okay. Hello? Hello, thank you so much. Our guests, it's a pleasure to see you and meet some of you for the very first time. Ladies and gentlemen, my paper is a little big, so I have a few minutes and I will just say a few points from it. I will avail it on some other channel where you can see it, but for now, I will just give a few points. I was asked to look at the relationship between two countries, Uganda and the United States, and the implication of those relations on democracy and good government. Now, I must say that every country in the world wants to deal with the United States. The reason is the United States is a very powerful country. And besides, second point, the United States has for so many years been the main purveyor of democracy in the world. I must say that it is losing credibility on the second point, but it remains a world power. Now, the relationship between Uganda and the United States today is a little bit absurd. I must say it's absurd because the United States, which is the biggest democracy in the world, is actually having a negative impact on democracy in Uganda, and it is dealing with Uganda, which is a major dictatorship in Africa. So for a big democracy to deal with a major dictatorship, that is what we call in English an aberration. It is a mistake and it's something not right. But today, the world has no shame. The United States can be the biggest democracy, but still help other countries to become dictatorships. So the world has no shame. It is a big misnomer, but again, what do we do? When you examine the relations between countries, you'll find out that these are not like love affairs between people. Countries work without other countries because they have interests. So when a country is dealing with another country, it is because of interests that it wants to achieve or obtain. Long time ago, the United States was the only country that could deal with other countries out of the desire to help. Now, that was in the 17th century and the 18th century. This is when they developed that idea. The idea during the Enlightenment, or a time you call the Age of Reason, when men were thinking about all problems of the world, many problems of the world, including knowing who God is, Because as you remember, or as you recall, they used to look at a big mountain and say, I think that is God. Then during the age of reason, they said, we can't do that. Let us examine where the big mountain came from. Then they say, no, it is a factor of tectonic movements. So that one is actually not God. So let's rethink about God. Now, in that time, some men came up with an idea that people who are well off or who are rich should, in a civilized way, take it as a responsibility to help people who are poor. Now, that became the founding stone of United States foreign affairs, to help societies out there of people that were poor. That was the foundation of the US aid. I think all of you know the US aid, that department. That is the oldest foreign affairs of United States of America. And that is why you see that even today, for those countries that don't exactly have very good relations with America, like Russia and China, still America can help them because the foundation used to be humanitarianism. America was helping human beings without due regard to anything else. Today, things have changed. America has become more selfish, America has become more mean, and America has become more brutal. We have international problems that are very challenging. For example, you have seen some electric cars driving around, like the Tesla. But can you imagine that none of those electric cars does more than 500 miles on a single charge? Now, this is still a big problem. Actually, I, for one, I can't buy that car until it can do more than 500 miles. As it is right now, it is just stupid luxury. I'm driving from here to the University of North Carolina, which is almost 400 miles. And suppose I'm going to come back, that's 800 miles. So what will the Tesla help me? And I'm going to charge for 1 hour for it to be able to help me. So the thing is, these technologies now have been found wanting. But there are certain chemicals, there are certain minerals in this world that can help speed up some of these technological innovations so that they are more useful to human beings. And unfortunately, most of these minerals are found in Africa. Now, all the powerful countries in the world want these minerals, including America, China, Russia, and everybody else. So what they are doing now is to confuse us, make us fight each other so that they can grab our minerals. It is very unfortunate, but it's very true. That's why we say there's no more shame in the world. But there's another dynamic. Whereas America would like to go out there and compete for these minerals and engage in all those other conflicts so that it gets these minerals, the American voters are tired of America's intervention abroad. So what America does, and this is very important for our people to understand, is to find proxies that can go out there and get for America those things, like those minerals, which America desires so much without America's direct intervention. Something happened in 1993 that made American voters change their mind. The Americans were fighting Islamic militants in Somalia, and one of their helicopters, it's called a Chinook, was shot by the Islamists in Somalia. it came down with a thud. 18 Rangers died. One of the Rangers, his body was pulled in the streets of Mogadishu, and the images were all shown in this country, with a white guy being pulled in the streets of Mogadishu by a bunch of, I won't use the bad word, but some Africans in Somalia. So the Americans were very angry. That is the time that a policy began. That policy is called No Boots on the Ground. So America started a policy of going abroad to do for Americans, but without any boots on the ground. And then America, once again, started using what we call proxies. Now, the most popular proxy in the world today, besides people like Saddam Hussein, who were the precursors, and the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, is Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. Now, Yoweri Museveni is very important to America because he does America's bidding abroad, and he fits the policy of no boots on the ground. America finds Museveni more useful than you guys, you Ugandans. You are clamoring to let Museveni go. And this is contrary to what America wants. America wants their Museveni. So they don't care about you. Now, with the situation you find yourselves in, you must be very strategic in engaging Museveni in your struggle, in engaging America in your struggle against Museveni. You must be extremely strategic. You need very creative leadership. You need brains. I am very happy that my brother Katana is well versed in liberation philosophy, and I really would want Waiswa to spend a lot of time with Ndugu Katana, because his concepts of liberation philosophy are very good. Spend time with him. So what do we do? How do we engage with these people? Number one, twekolere ku nsonga zaffe. We should stop thinking that someone else is going to come and help us, because that guy also has his interests. And there's nothing we can do about his interests. So we got to do it ourselves. But in order to do that, we must have determination. Temwina kutia danger. We must have determination. And I think we are already determined enough, and we can do this. The other point I thought that I should touch on is, there are very few, Dr. Kauma, don't worry. We should, when we are engaging with America, focus. Now, remember that this is a democracy. A democracy has certain things that are peculiar to democracy. The leaders in this country have no power. That is something you should remember. Unlike Uganda, where someone threatens you because he is driving in Penkoni and he has a gun and some, here in America, the leaders have no power. The power belongs to the voter. Therefore, and this has happened before, when South Africa was, the South Africans, the ANC was engaging with America against apartheid, and you must recall that all the governments here in America were supporting apartheid. Exactly the same situation we are in right now. Ronald Reagan was working with the white people against apartheid. So, and yet the ANC had to work with America to defeat apartheid. So you know what they did? They went to the universities, they went to the churches, they went to all local organizations where the small American is found. Because it is that little small American who has the vote. And it is that little small American who is the boss of the American leaders. So you should have that at the back of your mind. Number 3, the NUP must consciously position itself like a worthy and credible substitute for Museveni. There's one day I went for a meeting here in Washington. For those who know me, I have been incessantly in this struggle. And when I reached there, I spoke to the leader of the organization and some 2 other people. And they asked me a question which made me very angry, but I managed to contain myself. They said, oh, so now, are you saying Mr. Kyagulanyi can be the president of Uganda? Can you imagine that? Because for them, they can't imagine business without Museveni. So I said, oh yes, because he is the very embodiment of the people. He is carrying aspirations, and promises of Ugandans. And when you look and see all those people that support him, it does not matter how he speaks. It doesn't matter how many degrees or diplomas he has or he doesn't. He is a representative of the people. And for that matter, he's worthy. Now, I must say that we are closely monitoring developments in the world. And I tell you, guys, don't look at the way things are and feel weak. We have really done well. We, as in the NUP, we have done very well. I tell you this because I have seen it. We have circumnavigated and paralyzed Museveni and his government in this country. They started by wanting to get the oil from the ground, and we said no. And for them, they think we are not patriotic and we are not nationalists. We are. We want the money of the oil very much. We want that oil to come out of the ground, let them sell it, and let it develop our country. But we know the kind of leaders we have. They are thieves. When that money comes from the oil, they are going to steal all of it. These guys are so pathetic that they have even started stealing the oil before it is officially out of the ground. These people are so pathetic that the other day they went to Russia and bought airplanes against the oil which has not yet been mined. We shall pay you, we have oil. Why didn't you go to France and get hospital equipment against that oil? And so we shall pay you against the oil. Why do you get airplanes? These airplanes they have, the Sukhoi 35, a Sukhoi 35 will fly from Nimule to Kisoro in 2 minutes. Why did you buy it? Why did you buy it? If you are in a war with Egypt, if you are in a war with South Africa, that makes sense. But Ugandans need it for what? We're not even in war with those people. So Museveni is a militarist. He thinks only in military terms. He's like a carpenter who thinks that every problem must be solved with a hammer. Anyway, the oil, we refused it to come out of the ground. We spoke to General Electric and said, please don't go there. And we presented a lot of sense, and they haven't gone since that time. We have done well, comrades. We have done very well. We have spoken with our friends on Capitol Hill, and we have gotten travel restrictions for a lot of people. You see, when I say the leaders in NUP must aspire to be knowledgeable, I'm very serious about that. When these guys, when they are talking with you, they assess you to see how competent or incompetent you are. The other day, we had a demonstration against the IMF because there was about $1 billion that had to be disbursed for COVID and all that. And our people went and demonstrated. And some of us were behind the curtains. And so we were talking with these people and saying, you see, we are not saying don't give money to Uganda. That's not what we are saying. We are very patriotic, you know. But we know our people. Most of that money is going to be marked. What is that term you use in Parliament, which Museveni likes very much? Classified. Most of it is going to be classified. Classified means Museveni and his people directly will steal it. That's what it means, direct. So we ended up saying, let's do this. Instead of 1 billion, cut it in 4. Give them a little and ask for accountability. If they give you that, give them a little more. Now, when your people hear you reasoning like that, they know they are dealing with people who are capable of taking over. So aspire to educate yourselves. And then with that, you'll be very respected. Lastly, as night follows day, Museveni will go. Some of us are not saying, you know, he will die, is it what? No. We shall speed up that process. We don't, because our people are suffering a lot. So, dear Ugandans, we think about you. We know that you look at us in the diaspora and have hope. Continue to have that hope because we are not sleeping. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Byakuleka. I know, Mr. Semakula, you have something to do downstairs. If you want to come and make your presentation, be quick, and then we shall have Colorado chapter after you. So, Mr. Semakula will be presenting an individual paper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm presenting a paper I researched about. It's a topic, the role of the Ugandan diaspora in fighting for democracy and human rights for our country. I'll try to be brief, just like how the doctor said. Pretty much, my paper tries to explore the significant role we, the Ugandans in the diaspora, can do in advocating for democracy rule of law and elimination of dictatorial tendencies in our countries. I base my argument and research on the people power movement, which I do subscribe to, and all of you guys here. Especially I'm looking at the last 5 years where the NUP people power under the leadership of Honorable the President, Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, came into play in regards to politics in our country. And I'm discussing reasons behind the prominence of we Ugandans in advancing the agenda of seeing a new Uganda and a new leadership of the President. Our fellow countrymen also look at the specific contributions we Ugandans here are doing, and I based my submission basically on the way we've been able to publicize information which the regime really tries hard to suppress. What I mean is there are some stuff that the regime in Uganda using media outlets like NBS, NTV and others cannot show the world, but us here in the diaspora can show the world. I also talk about our role in advocating for democracy and human rights reforms in asking countries where we live to cause change to our country in Uganda. I'm trying to be as brief as I can. My introduction bases on letting you know what the term diaspora means. Honestly, diaspora means it entails the consciousness and emotional attachment to a place of origin. In that regard, as a Semakula, I know when I live in the United States, I remain a Ugandan by default or by whatever. And over the past few years, our Ugandan diaspora has increasingly become a significant player in Uganda's political arena. One prominent politically active Ugandan community is us, the People Power Movement, which was initiated in 2018, following the emergence of Honorable His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu on the scene of politics. We serve as an activism and advocacy arm of the National Unity Platform. And pretty much in recent years, we've seen different diaspora organizations and groups being paramount and instrumental in advocating for change in their countries of origin. I'll give an example. For instance, the Cuban and Armenian American communities, they represent a very strong lobbying force in Washington, D.C., just like what Comrade Martin said. The Iraqi groups played a crucial role in encouraging American military intervention in Iraq in 2003. Countries such as Israel, Armenia, consider their people strategically vital political assets, while countries like India and the Philippines recognize their citizens through what they contribute through remittances. And I think it's something we are doing here. The Ugandan government seems to downplay our role as Ugandans who live here. But if you look at the statistics and what we give into the economy of our country, it is paramount. And several factors have really made us to act and be prominent on the world stage, including advancement in communication technologies, our policies which allow us to have that freedom to say what we want without fearing for nothing. And these have really energized the young men and women and all generations of Ugandans to seek and ask for change. In the case of our country, we've really played a pivotal role in advocating for change. For instance, the People Power Movement in the UK, United States and Canada, have taken a bold step in speaking to partners of Uganda. We've achieved so much through boardroom meetings, just like what Comrade Martin said. We speak to senators, congressmen, and people who matter in the politics of this country. we are also, the Ugandan diaspora holds a special heart in the place of Ugandans. All of us want Uganda, love Uganda. We just hate Museveni, right? And this we've achieved through a lot of dedication and hard work. We have also maintained emotional, cultural, and spiritual connection with our country, which really resonates well with the people of Uganda. We've done, when I say we, I mean the People Power Movement. We've done a major significant contributions for the fight for democracy and human rights. One way is we've done it is through the publicizing of information that the Museveni regime doesn't want the world to know. We have been inspired by actions of other groups, such as those Arab Spring uprisings. You all remember what happened in Libya, what happened in Sudan, in Tunisia, and Egypt. We have leaders and comrades who are teaching at universities. Case in point is Captain Sejinja here, and others who go to these colleges and teach young children and American citizens and Ugandan Americans about what exactly is going on in our country. I think, to me, that's a major boost to our people to know exactly how our country is managed and you know, how it's managed and being mismanaged by the regime. Another strategy we've really employed, Madam Deputy President, and I think it's very, very important. You know, the People Power Movement is protesting when these guys visit here. The Honorable President is here, no one is protesting. But I can give you an example. Last year, December 13th, President Museveni came, General Museveni was in Washington, D.C., and dude couldn't really pass through the street because Ugandans were demonstrating all over the place. I think, to me, that's a plus. We are really making life hard for these guys. You know, folks we know are not doing what we think is right, so we do not give them, you know, a place of abode when they visit us. Thank you. You saw what happened in Washington State, Seattle, when Jacob Olanya was airlifted to come to seek medical treatment. And we also know what happened in the United Kingdom when the former Super Minister, John Patrick Amama Mbabazi, was in London on June 18th. You know, folks, the likes of Patricia Sewung and others went and really demonstrated in front of his hotel room. I'm trying to you know, I'm trying to summarize my presentation. Okay, sorry. We've also played an integral role in pursuit for justice. We take initiatives to prosecute folks who torture Ugandans. We have a case in point of you know, a prominent general, Kaihura. We all know how Kandiho cannot come here, and we all know how MK couldn't come to the United States. So these are avenues and plans orchestrated by the team leader and others to make sure that those who abuse human rights in Uganda cannot come to the United States, or they will never visit the UK or Sweden. We're just making it a norm to ensure that if you abuse others, then you shouldn't come here. If you come here, we'll step up and ask you to leave. And we are also, you know, practicing and asking host countries. When I say host countries, I mean, for instance, the US, to put a lot of energy and emphasis to countries like Uganda, which abuse human rights. We've got support for what we're doing, especially those who follow politics at the Capitol Hill. You know, Senator Bob Mendes is always writing about Uganda, is always presenting about Uganda. Senator Kuka, is it? Cory Kuka, right? Cory Booker. Yeah, he's always you know, protesting of what's going on in Uganda. These are things that the People Power Movement under the leadership of Dr. Kauma and other people like Martin, and those we know and those we don't know, but known to us and the leaders, you know, things we do behind the curtains. We also have a group, like the one with Robert Kavier Boston. They'll demonstrate every day. So it's part of our agenda to ensure that we have a better country, and we seek to ask that probably the United States should think more and boldly talk about what we see happening in Uganda, and they shouldn't send us ambassadors who are really, I wouldn't say insane, but you know, pretty lazy. You know, you have an ambassador who sees people being shot on the street but can't make a report. You go into a meeting and these representatives were asking you questions that, are you guys real? When we were launching the movie in New York and Beverly Hills, these guys couldn't believe what they were seeing. You know, someone shooting, you know, gunshots on the street, and they'd be like, is it real or it's graphic? We say it's real. So Uganda is bleeding, and I think we should call upon the US government, especially those of the powers, those who vote in our constituencies, reach out to all these senators and tell them that, you know what, we need something better. We can't look on as black people being massacred right, left, and center at the expense of, you know, white folks not being serious. All they're looking up is oil and gold and stuff like what we see in Uganda. As I wind up, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Moderator, I'll jump a couple of things here. What I can say is that we must, as Ugandan Americans or Ugandans in that regard, to effect change in Uganda, we must employ strategies such as influencing host country policies towards bad regimes. We should form interest groups, to form long-standing organizations, to coalitions to address specific issues. We must provide variable information to legislators and policy elites. Like, I think, who said it? I think Martin. Sometimes when we go to meet the folks in Washington, D.C., we don't go there with streamlined information. We sometimes give off-baked information. We seem a little bit confused. We do not speak the realities. We do not have all the data collected well. I think that is detrimental to our success and struggle. So moving forward, I think we must improve on that. If you demonstrate, give the facts. Do not grab a picture of the internet and go present it as a picture from Uganda. Yet we have the likes of Masudi or the Lonadis and all these folks killed on the streets. We should provide exactly what's real, and there should be documentation for that matter. Ladies and gentlemen, as I wind up, I think we should continue playing a crucial role in advocating for democracy and human rights in Uganda. We should always publicize information the regime doesn't want to see. We should organize protests, we should pursue justice, we should demand for reforms, and we should provide information to other comrades of ours who do not seem to understand what's going on. I will end here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Semakula. Colorado chapter, 8 minutes, right?
Thank you so much. I don't know whether they will be able to put up the PowerPoints, but all the same, I'll be able to say something. And most of what I'm going to say has been said. My topic is rethinking relationships between Uganda and the USA concerning healthcare. As you heard already, the United States established diplomatic relationships with Uganda since 1962, when Uganda gained independence from the UK. And of those 60 years that United States has been in relationship with Uganda, almost 40 years it has been in relationship with the current regime, which we are trying to, get rid of. And the reason it has really wanted to work with this current regime is because the current president, Mr. Tihawa has promised regional stability. Lutabaisra, yes. So he has promised regional stability, and that's why they have tried to work with him. But also the US has long-standing relationship in respect to health, primarily focused on combating infectious diseases, stroke epidemics like HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, COVID, to mention but a few. In this regard, the President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief, they call it in short PEPFAR. Will you remember that? That's the fund that has saved so many lives in Uganda, especially from HIV. As you see the name, you know, it was introduced in Uganda to combat HIV, and so many lives have been saved. However, there are challenges to this relationship that necessitate to rethink how the two countries approach health cooperation. The current government does not give priority to health care. When given funds due to corruption in the system, they move donated money to what they call unclassified budget. You know, the members of parliament will tell us, they know this better. So where they use the money for defense, they call it security, defense, but basically to keep themselves in power. They use that for bribes, self-enrichment, abusing human rights, to mention but a few. Okay, so donor money that we get in Uganda comprises of 80% of the money that we receive. But of this 80% that the US sends to Uganda, according to the 2021-23 budget, I want to give you some statistics, because about 26% of this went to security, and only 5.1 went to health care. So you can imagine. Actually, in Uganda, we don't need security, or we need health care more than we need security. Who causes the insecurity in Uganda in the first place? Yes. So instead of wasting the money on buying guns, we should buy equipment that we need, to treat our women, to cure cancer. I mean, we need health care as much as possible. I mean, and health care is not it. We need other services. We need infrastructure. So basically, Uganda is not badly off. We have all the services we need. We have all the resources we need. But all we need is good governance. And guess what? That's what people power is here to bring to Uganda. Mr. Kyagulanyi, under you people, if we work so hard, we are going to bring the good governance that we need to put the money where it needs to be. Okay, so we are rethinking on like how to use this money. So like the loans that they give to Mr. Tibuhaburwa, instead of giving it as cash, we could give it in terms of equipment, so that he doesn't have the cash, to take away and use for other services. Also, Mr. Martin mentioned that instead of giving them a lot of money that they can't account for, we give it in bits so that they can account for the bit we are giving them before we give them another bit. Yeah, so, basically that's what, unless you have questions, most of what I wanted to say has been said. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was 8 minutes. Thank you, Madam Ban. All right, next we're going to have Mr. Solomon Nkugwa, then we'll have the Boston chapter. I don't know if Boston is ready after that. So we'll have Mr. Solomon, then presenting an individual paper on...
Now, these gentlemen here, because they're political, they know the analogy of that, but we'll just sing it. What was it? Chinyonyi. Nobody knows like a monkey. Knows like a say, sosolie watafa, atuka kuliengede. Go. Is that so low? Sosolie watafa. Okay, now I'm going to take it up. Sosolie watafa, atuka kuliengede. I want to listen to some women now singing. Men, sosolie watafa, atuka kuliengede. Now men, sosolie watafa, atuka kuliengede. Together, hey! Sit down. All right, thank you so much. My name is Solomon Nkugwa, and I'm the president of a company called Nile Bridge International. I live here in Maryland, Washington, D.C., and sometimes I work with Dr. Kauma to organize young people. Most of the things I would have wanted to say, they have been said, okay? About how do we rethink U.S.-Uganda relations. The paper that I wanted to present actually almost has been presented by the former, is about healthcare. So I am an international development analyst, and the paper's title is The Political Economy and Social Impact of Post-Traumatic Stress Disorders among Women and Children in Uganda. Think about that. Now, I'd like all of us, and even women, to clap for ourselves because of the work that women do for children, orphans, and everybody else. Let's clap for ourselves. About 24 years ago, I was given a chance to tour with a group of young kids called the African Children's Choir. These kids comprised children in Uganda that were orphans. I myself, at 5 years old, became an orphan because a bad government killed my dad. Okay, so other children were from Kenya, from the streets, but some specific children from Rwanda I toured with. They were the survivors of the Rwandan genocide. And because I'm talking about the post-traumatic stress disorder, these kids had seen atrocities being done to their parents, mothers, children, using machetes. One kid called Delphine was saved out of a mass grave. And today I'll teach you a word before, hopefully I'll have the time. Now, okay, this kid came to our camps, and I was honored to help her go through that post-traumatic stress disorder, knowing that I myself was an orphan whose dad was killed by some bad people during Idi Amin's regime. So, what kind of tools did we use? Music, faith-based initiatives. Church, we taught a program that allowed these kids to tour around the world. They became ambassadors. They raised a lot of money, became confident, and they overcame their trauma. Rethinking US-Uganda relations. Money has been sent, and some of your demonstrations I have heard are that when this money goes to a country like Uganda or any other country, it's not accounted for. Or even when it is invested wrongly. Sometimes people that want to invest in terms of prescription. And I'm talking about, sorry, a doctor, I'm a pharmacist, Lagactil and Prozac. How can you give me that medicine when my dad was killed? Do you think that's the intervention that I need? No. Do you think Uganda needs more medication when something is going on that you're talking about today that needs a different type of intervention? No. So, anyway, Delphine, who was saved out of a mass grave, toured around the world, and we went everywhere. We were like on business and pleasure. We're going to Grand Canyon, Hollywood, everywhere. That was part of the intervention. But these kids raised a lot of money. Now, to cut a long story short, Delphine today is in the military in America, because after the tour we went back home. She got an opportunity to come back here. She went into nursing, and she became a professional nurse, but she entered into the military, the Air Force. Now she's serving with America. What are the two things that are happening in Delphine's life? One, she wants to save others, like her, who was saved out of mass grave. Two, she wants to fight those that might cause the problems around the world if America behaves very well. That's how we rethink the relations. So what does that really mean? It means that while all these macro discussions that we've just had about leaders that have to fight, because it's not just only a question of politics, it's also a question of the social process and the economic process. While these amazing fights are going on, you and I can do amazing things, and I think people have talked about it. The gentleman there has talked about it, that while America is playing those other games that we can't, we and you have been doing it. First, at a micro level, you send remittance money, don't you? The problem is that it is embezzled. So what is the future of Uganda is going to look like? Gentlemen, I really would actually ask that you look at how remittance money is moving from here to there, to the mother, to the sister, to the auntie, to the uncle, and how it might be embezzled or not. Now, I'm not talking about even just the government, but our fellow relatives. If you could create a policy, this remittance money could do so much more as we wait for the bigger cake that you guys are organizing for the future of Uganda. That is one. But in other ways, how we rethink US-Uganda relations is, if you have an organization, but you are working in a fragmented fashion, please do something like this. Organize yourself, register that organization so that it becomes a 501c3, because that way you can negotiate better with the US government, such that what he has just suggested, if we don't get that funding from the government, United Nations, World Bank and all that, we are able to get it from the smaller people that the gentleman suggested, from churches, from schools. Now, what you all guys talked about is called civil society. In international development, we study that when governments fail us, we go to civil society. Civil society are organizations, are schools. The little mom and pop that has a restaurant, and you give your story, and you are in an organized fashion, because in America, they have to account for that money. Sometimes they get that money back. If you tell them, this is my 501c3, They are able to give you that money, and you are able to do a lot back home. That's how you are able to organize yourself at a micro level. Now, I know that my time is really going, and it is gone. I want to say one thing. This is how it is. Women were abused in Uganda since colonial times. They're still being abused. Men were killed, and sons like myself became orphans. Think about the war in the north, which took about over 20 years. Think about all that atrocities. The things are not lost on you that have been happening in Uganda. But if we want to actually see our country change while the political conversation is going on, we will use our own money. We will partner with other organizations to do these 4 things, which I found also rhyme with another organization, World Health Authority, one of which is cultivating leadership and governance in mental health. Because when you do that, then policies are going to be structured where mental health matters. Because people here in America, we need to be sober, sane, and structured in order to do the things that we need to do. So are the people back in Uganda, despite everything that has happened to you, gentlemen. That is one. Secondly, we need to then create initiatives that are community-based, that will address the depression among women. And why? My rationale is simple. When my mother became a widow, she got that stigma. I became the stigma of an orphan. And then what happened? What happened then, my mother had not gotten the education. She was just a beautiful woman. She was a hardworking woman, but she did not have the education before. But even after, she never got the capacity, which the future government must think about, building capacity among women. Because then when men are dying and creating wars, women are going to manage the children. Tomorrow, I'm going to be here and also speaking with young people. And I think I'm going to be blessed to be with my namesake, Solomon, the son of the principal, to also talk about young people here and their role and how they can help other people who are depressed back in Uganda. That's the second piece. The third piece, and then I'll say the last piece, and then I'll be done. The third piece is promotion and prevention. Going back to what I said, we cannot prevent by prescription, giving medication, when the problem was moving Delphine from a math grade to teaching her what love is all about, making her tour around the world so that she can see a new world view, and then she can come back and say, I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to join those that fight against atrocities. That's how we can strategically think about the things. Lastly, research and development. Continuous research and development. But it's going to come from our leaders as we do the fight, the political fight. We're going to look at these other smaller ways that other speakers have suggested, that while America is playing those amazing games for which I can't afford the paycheck. I'm not giving that paycheck to explain why somebody can stay in power for such a long time. But I can explain how I get out of depression. That by giving a child like Delphine a chance to exist. And by giving yourself a chance to be sober, sane, and secure. Lastly, this is the last one. Hypothesis. A labor force whose psyche has been dealt with by investments, counseling, diagnosis, and treatment sometimes, will translate into a stronger labor force. That labor force will translate into the national GDP that we want, and then it will reflect on the development index of an individual. Because if people are rich back home, or they reach what we call the middle class, and if we are partnering with the middle class here to do those things, then while we have these conversations, maybe we'll have some sane people, stable people, sober people from whom we create a pool of new leaders. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have very little time left. So Boston chapter, Chicago chapter coming after that, and proxies, okay. And I think those are the three. So Boston chapter, please. Boston chapter, 5 minutes. Mr. Taylor, 5 minutes. Helen, then you'll be next. Proxy. As other presenters, I don't see them. I think that's what, if I haven't mentioned your name, come let me know if you're on the list. Senkumba, is he around? Is Mr. Senkumba around? Who is presenting for California? He will, okay. All right. Boston.
People power, our power, Jemuli, Mukoye, Museveni yalwanira emyaka 5, Mukoye.
Okay, so comrades, today we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is about climate change. But before we begin, I would love to pose a question to us. How many of us, by a show of hands, believe that climate change is real? How many of us, by a show of hands, believe that climate change is a scam? How many of us don't know about anything about climate change? You're confused whether it's a scam or it's a reality. So it's good that by a show of the hands in this room, we all agree that climate change is real. And indeed, this is a reality. So today, as Team Boston, we thought it's imperative to share with us how Uganda can combat climate change. So we want to talk about energy security, how Uganda can transit to renewables that are accessible, affordable, and secure for each and everyone. Now, climate change is a public good problem that affects each and everyone, regardless of our political parties, regardless of our sex, regardless of our religion, regardless of your economic status. When it hits everyone. So it does not need any passport to cross borders. That's why you see what happened in New York a few weeks ago with the wildfires from Canada. New York was covered by a cloud that was dark. That is climate change. So if you don't know what climate change means, this is just a simple definition. There are long-term shifts in weather patterns that are causing the disasters that we're living in today. So as we speak, we are living under a climate crisis that we need to find solutions to. But before we talk about even climate change, there is something more important that we need to address. That's the issue of climate justice. You cannot talk about climate change without addressing the concerns of climate justice. Because climate justice addresses the social issues that we face. And you'll find that there's a linkage about these social issues we face. So going to energy security, it's about the availability of energy sources that we have in our countries at an affordable cost without any disruption. So that's why we're saying, as Team Boston, can we find remedies to Uganda's energy crisis? We need energy democracy, which is lacking in our country today. As we speak today, over half of our population is still cutting trees. They're using charcoal to cook. That is destroying our environment. Our forests are climate heroes. They work as carbon sinks. But the more trees we cut down, it means we're exacerbating global warming. Yet scientists have warned us under the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that we need to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2035 if we are to keep at the limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius as it is in the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. So climate change, for us, we believe as Bostonians, it is a political problem. It is our leaders in the government, local government, in agencies or policymakers who have the power to find solutions to this climate emergency that we're in today. Their inaction is going to lead us to climate hell. That's why we're proposing that it is important for us as Ugandans to address these key issues. As you see on the pie chart, some of the hazards that Uganda has been facing from 1800 to 2020. So we have issues of heat waves that I've just talked about. As you know, you've been watching news, they said that July last month was the hottest month in the history. So I'm sure beyond doubt, all of you felt the temperatures. We were literally, boiling up because of these heat waves. So we need, you see also, food scarcity because the production is shrinking. Look at 900 Karamojongs died because of the acute famine. So as Ugandans, how can we address that issue of food insecurity? Because it's happening in different parts of our country. Years before, we used to have granaries, but how many people have granaries nowadays to secure food? It's a few of them. So you've seen rainfalls that have caused floods in Kampala, in Kasese, in different parts of the country, even here in the US and different countries. Go to Beijing, go to Greece. It has been a serious issue that needs to be addressed. So the water levels are also rising at a very high speed. So we need to also understand the genesis of these climate injustices that we want to address. So we have to look at the past, because it takes us back to the 1850s, during the second phase of the Industrial Revolution. So as you see on that projector, it's talking about the Industrial Revolution, then talks about also access to gas and oil. Because of industrialization, they needed to ensure that they began from oil, rather from coal, then they transited to oil and gas. Then they were using, of course, cheap labor, which was slavery. So we went to the present. We are seeing today what we call environmental racism, and it's observed with, the East African crude oil pipeline, EACOP, because it's French-owned, and they're going to, of course, destroy our environment. Because with the EACOP, this is a carbon bomb they are putting in our backyards. But as we speak today, this pipeline has displaced 100,000 Ugandans and Tanzanians. People are losing their land rights because of this pipeline. So we believe that any development that infringes on the rights of Ugandans is not sustainable development. So as Bostonians, we are saying Uganda needs to have sustainable development that puts people first, not profits above people. So we want also to fight for a future where we address the uncomfortable history that we faced as Ugandans. So if you look at this graph, of course, it talks about the linkage between climate change and the different factors that we've talked about, but I will just go through because of time. Then we're also talking about alternatives. What can the government of Uganda do to ensure that we have this transition to renewables? So we're suggesting that, one, let's go solar energy, because we are blessed as Uganda that the equator crosses our country. So from January to December, we have a lot of sun. Why can't our government tap into this potential of solar energy to make it, to bring light to all households of Uganda? We're also talking about nuclear energy. You've heard Despot Museveni talking about, putting up nuclear plants. So we have biomass. With biomass, you turn trash into treasure. You bring light and also gas to families. We have geothermal, hydropower. So we have also to look at this graph here, because it shows us what sectors are leading to the greenhouse gas emissions. So the biggest sector that is causing fossil fuel, that is causing these greenhouse gas emissions is the energy sector. That's why you see it's at over 70%. Then agriculture follows, and as you see others. So you ask yourself a question: who has caused this climate crisis? Who are the largest emitters of the greenhouse gas emissions if we are to look at the history? The largest emitter is China, followed by the US, followed by Russia and India. So as Uganda, we are emitting less than 0.1% of the greenhouse gas emissions. It's absurd that as Africa, as the least emitters of greenhouse gas emissions, we are the most affected when it comes to adverse impacts of climate change. We are hit the most, and we are always hit the first. So that has to change, because we are diverting the small budgets we have for key sectors like the human capital development sector, where we have health and education, and we put it towards climate mitigation and adaptation, denying ourselves better livelihoods, unlike the greatest polluters. So if you look at also, this graph shows you the impacts climate change has on our lives. So as you see, it's causing us different diseases because of the severe rainfalls and so on. People are getting asthma attacks, they're getting different diseases, as you see, that I can't go through everything because of time. Then if you look at this map, it will give you a sense of who is affected most worldwide. So the greener it is, it means you're least affected. Then if you got the extreme red, it means you're the most affected by change. Look at where Africa is. We are in a red zone. So it means we are sitting on a climate bomb that we need to find solutions to. Look at America, where is? America is green. So it means they have resources to combat climate change, unlike Africa. So I'll skip those because of time. So how can we address these inequalities? One is by demanding countries like the US, which are emitting a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, to pay reparations for the loss and damage they've caused, mainly in developing countries and highland countries, because we're not responsible for this climate mess they've created. So we want also to remind rich countries to ensure that they start removing pollution from the atmosphere, because they have the technologies we lack in Africa. Then we want also to hold polluters accountable. So by this we mean that let polluters pay huge finances or huge taxes or fines for the pollution they are releasing to the atmosphere, because the more carbon dioxide release, it means they are causing to the depletion of the ozone layer, which is of course causing problems to us. My colleague is going to talk about nuclear energy.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Taylor. People power? Our power? Yeah, thank you. Comrades, as you know, that in Africa mostly, as you've seen it, on the map, we are in the red zone. That means we are polluting the most. We have the biggest challenge. If you see on the map, there was parts of the green in the map, that is Canada and the United States. Therefore, there are so many things they have done that we haven't done. And this doesn't need nuclear science. This is just something that you can do. We are looking at nuclear energy, and it has been a success story in many countries. In Dubai, it is a success. But you might think that, why am I speaking about Dubai? It's also a success in South Africa, but because they have leaders who have the will to do this. My fellow Ugandans, we have electricity supply in Uganda that is only 45%. And in the urban areas, it is 57%. So it is sad. What we have to do right now, let's resort to nuclear energy. And we are calling upon the United States government to partner with the able leadership of His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Because you know, as I quote Comrade Waiswa here, he said even tomorrow, Museveni might be down. So, we are calling upon the United States to partner with the government of His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu to invest in nuclear energy, because it will reduce on the carbon emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, as I wind up, because of the time, there are so many points about how we can reduce on this, to minimize on the greenhouse gas and so many things. But as I wind up, I want to call upon the United States government, as you're looking at the small informal sectors, also target the big shots, the multinational corporations. If you read about what is happening right now in the Niger River right now, Total has destroyed the Niger Delta. The river is all contaminated with fumes and gases from the mining of the oil from Niger. So let us not look at the small things. Let's go for the big shots. They are the biggest emitters of our climate. Yeah, thank you so much. I think Comrade Taylor will wind up, then we can.
Okay, so I'm gonna be very precise. I'll just go through very precise. So we're talking about also this carbon bomb called EACOP, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline. As you know, it's going to be the longest heated crude oil pipeline in the world. So it will be traversing from Tanzania to Uganda, from Uganda to Tanzania, and it will be emitting 34 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions every year. That is 6 more times of what Uganda is emitting. So it means we have a carbon bomb in our country, Uganda. And if you look at the lifespan of this pipeline, it will be emitting 379 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So that is a threat to a vulnerable country like Uganda. And this pipeline is giving us a debt burden because we are borrowing $3.5 billion. So this is not a grant. It is a loan that we have to pay back. But again, if you hear from the International Energy Agency, it is warning us that in the next 2 decades, the price of oil will be going down. So it means in the end, Uganda is going to be stranded with this asset and shall be saddled with a debt, which is going to go to the young generation. So do we want the young people to be choked with this debt? So we're saying that if there are alternatives of renewables, why not prioritize them than going for this carbon bomb? Because the owner of this pipeline, Total Energies, owns 62%. So it means they're just stealing crude oil from Hoima to the international market. In the end, the ordinary Ugandan will not benefit from it. We've seen this firsthand in Nigeria. Read about the Ogoni community. Shell has been drilling in Nigeria for the last 55 years. They've been drilling oil. They came with the same talking points of the energy industry, that they're going to end energy poverty. But today as we speak, energy poverty is high in Nigeria. Go to Mozambique, the same thing. They've invested over $20 billion US in offshore, the offshore oil companies. But Mozambique has its population of over 70% without electricity. So it means that the fossil fuel companies, they don't care about us. Don't be deceived that Total Energies cares about you. The only thing they care about are profits. As believers of climate change, we call these evil profits because they are putting profits over our lives. That is wrong. So this is the summary of what we've been talking about. It is very tiny, but you will see that it talks about our objective, what are we demanding, what are we standing for as Bostonians. We want to ensure that we bring cheap energy to each and every household in Uganda, because today electricity is expensive. 1 unit of electricity is at 770 shillings. Just one unit cost. So that's expensive for a vulnerable poor country like Uganda. So at least we want that price to come down if we have options like solar energy, which is going to, of course, bring light to most of the households and will stop people from cutting down trees, because we've been seeing Odonga Oto, the former MP in Acholi, fighting with people who have been cutting down trees in Acholi to sell charcoal in Kampala. So Odonga Oto is doing the right cause. We have to protect our forests. You've seen how the government has, sold, was trying to sell Bugoma Forest. You've seen Mabira Forest, they've been cutting down trees. So those are the things we're trying to address. So the problem that we were solving is unable and high cost of energy, lack of financing and infrastructure, high variables to climate disasters. So we also have different stakeholders. So we are planning to partner with the International Finance Corporation. That's a sister organization of the World Bank. The IFC is willing to invest in renewables. Once you take them are good proposals, they're supporting very many projects. Well, we've seen case studies in Kenya and Ghana on the African continent. We have the private sector where we have banks. Different banks can invest in these renewables once the government gives them incentives, because it's all about incentives. So different approaches. We have nuclear energy, solar energy, all the things we talked about. We have other considerations to talk about is, I'm wrapping up, Daniel, is political stability. So we're in this energy crisis because of things like the war of Russia and Ukraine, because as oil producers, when started fighting, the price skyrocketed of oil and gas and also food. We have also availability of funding as a challenge, bureaucracy as a challenge, lack of data as a challenge, enforcement as a challenge, because our country, Uganda, with enforcement organizations, most cases they are corrupt. You've seen it with NEMA. And once enforcers are not well facilitated or well funded, of course they will be victims of being bribed by those who think they can do anything with them. Then we have also the next steps as I wrap up. The next steps, of course, we are saying that let's engage different stakeholders from the ground level all the way, civil society, the people, the academia, the youth, community leaders, cultural leaders, to ensure that they embrace these renewables, because there is a challenge of some people fighting these renewables. I've seen cases on the African continent where they've been fighting solar panels. Some cultures believe that if you put a solar panel on top of their roof, it's going to stop rain, which is, of course, factually incorrect. So these are some of the beliefs we have to talk to our people and they change their mindsets about renewables. We have also lack of political will, because renewables, you need political will. If you have a president who is a climate denier, then it means you're not going to go forward. So that's why we're saying that let's lobby, let's vote for presidents, let's vote for leaders who are climate believers. Let's also vote for MPs who are going to, or politicians, green politicians. Our MPs are here. How often do they talk about climate change on the floor of parliament? So this is a conversation that it should bring on the floor of parliament and their constituencies every day. So also in your houses, think about small things. What comes on your plate? Are you eating more beef? Because the more beef you eat, it means the more land is being cleared. More forests are being cleared. So it means that, of course, because meat emits methane, and methane is worse than CO2. So you've seen the Amazon forest. They are clearing it because of farms. So let's change our diets if possible and become vegetarian to protect our environment. And lastly, as we say, Bloomberg has an article that says that Uganda needs $28.1 billion to help us to adapt to the effects of climate change and cut emissions until the end of 2030. So overall, we want to say that climate change is our immoral imperative. Let's do everything we can as Ugandans to protect the next future generations, because life does not stop with our generation. So let's be thoughtful of each and every one. We thank you.
Thank you for the 5 minutes, Mr. Taylor. Helen, Chicago, 3 minutes, please. We're supposed to start the documentary soon. We actually skipped through our break because of this presentation. So if you come here, please, try to be brief, because people are now coming to watch the documentary. We want to make sure that we respect that time as well. So Helen, Proxy, are you here? Proxy, who else was also present and is not here? Yeah, so Helen, Proxy, then Mr. Sejinja and the team will wrap up. 3 minutes, Helen.
People power, our power. My name's Helen Nandaula. I'm representing Chicago. Today, I'm presenting one of the most interesting topics in our struggle, and that is the human rights. This topic is not just interesting, but it's also an emotional topic when it comes to the struggle. As I was making my final touches, I thought I needed to say the definition of human rights. The definition of human rights is that human rights are moral principles or norms for certain standards of human behavior and are regularly protected in municipal and international law. Human rights are fundamental rights. We are inherently entitled to our rights because we are human beings. Human rights are universal. Therefore, we should be the same. Therefore, it should be the same for everyone. Human rights go hand in hand with the rule of law. For the case of Uganda, the definition says human rights go hand in hand with the rule of law, but General Museveni has taken that away from Uganda. The idea of human rights suggests if the public discourse of peacetime global society can be said to have a common moral language. Therefore, that should be the human rights. And that is why we should demand for human rights, even from the Western, if we feel like our human rights are being violated. Now I'll start my paper, and my topic today is, the theme of my topic today is the grim reality, unraveling the US-Uganda relationship. And the evolving relationship between the US and Uganda is undergoing scrutiny due to escalation of human rights violations. Recent events that have underscored the need for comprehensive reevaluation, with discussions extending to the potential implementation of sanctions, including the cessation of military funding to Uganda. This article delves into the intricate landscape of the US-Uganda relationship, addressing human rights issues and exploring the impacts of punitive measures so far undertaken. The gruesome reality of human rights concerns. Uganda's human rights record is a haunting tapestry of systematic abuses, painting a portrait of disregard for the most basic tenets of human dignity. Instances of political opposition suppression, constraints on free expression, and allegations, but in our case, we can say acts of torture that constitute just a few layers of this disturbing canvas. The aftermath of the 2021 presidential election brought these concerns into a stark relief, with the Ugandan government seemingly unburdened by the weight of its blatant violations. This has further been showcased by the exit of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, with its mandate not being renewed by the government of Uganda, which is viewed as a reflection and attitude of the government's response to the increasing scrutiny over abuses such as torture, forced disappearances, abductions, detentions without trial, and rearrests of persons legally released by the courts. Political dissent quashed. The suppression of political dissent in Uganda is a chilling illustration of power's iron grip. Opposition figures face arbitrary arrests, intimidation, and even violence, effectively silencing any attempt to voicing alternative viewpoints. Voicing alternative viewpoints. The erosion of democratic space has left citizens with dwindling avenues to express their concerns or grievances. The freedom of expression strangled. The stifling of freedom of expression has become a hallmark of Uganda's human rights crisis. Journalists, activists, and citizens who dare to criticize the government face censorship, threats, and even physical harm. This pervasive climate of fear shocks the growth of uninformed and empowered society. Torture and extrajudicial killings. I'll outline some of them. Torture and extrajudicial killings, and the sanctions landscape. The proposed advance sanctions, in light of the persistently grave human rights violations in Uganda, a call for more impactful adverse sanctions has gained momentum. These measures designed to exert substantial pressure on the Ugandan government, and they are aimed at fostering genuine change and accountability. While their implementation carries risks, they represent a potential avenue to address the deeply entrenched repression in the country. These are the economic sanctions. Imposing broader economic sanctions could have, these are the things that we want the US to do. Imposing broader economic sanctions could have a profound impact on the Uganda's government finances and decision making. These sanctions might involve freezing assets, blocking international transactions, and restricting access to global markets. The economic strain would compel the government to reconsider its actions and prioritize the human rights. The second one is the trade restrictions. Implementing trade restrictions, particularly on key commodities and resources, could create substantial leverage by limiting the export and import of specific goods. The Ugandan government would face economic challenges that might lead to a reconsideration of its repressive policies. The third one is the suspension of aid programs. Temporarily suspending certain aid programs could send a powerful message to the Ugandan government. International assistance often contributes significantly to a nation's development and stability. By halting or redirecting aid, the government would be compelled to address human rights concerns to regain access to essential resources. International isolation, coordinated efforts to isolate Uganda on the international stage could amplify the pressure for change. Diplomatic isolation, reduced international partnerships, and even the suspension of membership in international organizations could signal the global community's unwavering commitment to ending repression. The next one is the global arms embargo. Enforcing an international arms embargo on Uganda would hinder a government's ability to maintain its repressive machinery. This measure could curtail the use of excessive force and create an incentive for the government to engage in technology and communication restrictions. Cutting off access to technology and communication resources that enable government surveillance and control could disrupt their mechanisms of repression. This would impede their ability to monitor and suppress political dissent. Freezing foreign investments. Freezing foreign investments in Uganda sectors linked to government officials could lead to economic stagnation and decrease their incentive to perpetuate human rights abuses. Comparing the current sanctions and adverse sanctions, the current targeted sanctions have had limited success in eliciting tangible improvements in Uganda's human rights record. While they signal international condemnation, they may not potent enough to prompt systematic change. In contrast, adverse sanctions would carry a higher risk of economic and political ramifications, potentially affecting both the Uganda government and its citizens. Implementing these more impactful advanced sanctions requires a thoughtful and strategic approach. The US government provided $920 million in 2022, which compounds to the undermining of the efforts towards improving the states in human rights respects in the country. The international community must work collectively to avoid unintended harm to the Ugandan people while holding the government accountable for its actions. Ultimately, the goal should be to create an environment where respect for human rights, democratic values, and the rule of law prevail. In conclusion, as the international community navigates these challenging waters, the focus on justice, human rights, and the well-being of the Ugandan populace must remain paramount. By championing these principles and coordinating collective efforts, the global community can hope to contribute meaningfully to a future where repression gives way to respect and the rights and dignity of all individuals are upheld. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Olukungana lwa NUP Diaspora Convention wewe tuwe lutambula. Lutandikidde mu Jjiya ebigambo biwulira. Abaana bagamba nti ensimbi eziwolwa mu 7 ezina mugaso gwe zigasa bannayuganda wadde eggwanga. N'olwekyo wandibadde wateekwayo enkola endala eggwanga la America gyerina okukolaganamu ne Uganda. Era nga bagamba Uganda ejja kufuna emirembe era ejja kweyagala nga Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine amaze okulayira nga pulezidenti w'eggwanga Uganda. Naye bw'anaaba nga Mwami Museveni yakyaliko Uganda tegenda kweyagala era ensimbi zonna ezinaaba ziwolebwa eggwanga zijja kubuzaabuzibu zireme kumanyibwa kkowa gye ziri era zireme kumanyibwa ani alina ensimbi ezo. Era zireme kumanyibwa ensimbi ezo zikoze biki. Sino bannayuganda bo baagala enteekateeka eno erongoosebwe era nga baagala Kyagulanyi Ssentamu asooke afune obukulembeze olwo ate bannayuganda basobole okweyagalako mu nsi yaabwe. Mwebale mwenna abasobodde okujja ne mwetaba mu convention eno ayitandika butandisi olunaku lwakubiri enkya 13 egenda kuba olunaku olwokusatu ate ku 14 Monday lwegenda okukomekkerezebwa. Kati nno omusaba fuukula nti obeerawo wetabe mu mbeera eno kuba ebyokuyiga bingi ate ebigasa n'okuyamba eggwanga lyaffe. Mukama Katonda nsaba bankuumire tujja kuba tuddamu tuwaye mweraba.